Ron DeSantis said he wants to fight the invasive snake that's eating its way through the Everglades. Pythons are not native to the area, and they are disturbing our ecosystem and threatening biodiversity.
Deep in the Florida swamps, something has been caught on camera that doesn't make sense. Not just rare, not just disturbing, impossible to explain. We already know the story everyone's been talking about. Giant pythons overrunning the Everglades, entire ecosystems collapsing, nearly 90% of native mammals gone, like they were erased overnight. That alone should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Because the latest footage shows something else moving through the aftermath. Not another predator, not something you can clearly see or track, but something that's changing how everything behaves, from the smallest animals to the top of the food chain. It doesn't hunt like the pythons, it doesn't leave the same signs, but its presence is undeniable. And now scientists are starting to realize the invasion didn't just break the system, it may have triggered something new inside it. Whatever this is, it's already rewriting the rules of survival in the swamp. The pythons may have started this, but they're no longer in control of how it ends. 165 miles per hour of destruction. The Florida Everglades was once a living, breathing miracle. It wasn't just a swamp, it was a vast, slow-moving river of grass stretching over 1.5 million acres. This was an ancient system, a subtropical wilderness that pulsed with life. It was so important that its value was estimated at over $31 billion every single year. You see, it wasn't just home to alligators and birds. It provided flood protection and clean drinking water for millions of people. Life here moved in a perfect, delicate balance. Huge flocks of wading birds covered the sky like clouds. But then, the sky turned black. In August of 1992, Hurricane Andrew, a monster Category 5 storm, tore through southern Florida. The winds were screaming at over 165 miles per hour. It flattened entire neighborhoods. And in the chaos, it ripped apart a reptile breeding facility near Miami. When the winds finally died down, an unknown number of Burmese pythons had slipped away into the wetlands. But here represents the catch. That storm wasn't the only problem. At the exact same time, a slower disaster was unfolding. Throughout the 90s, Burmese pythons were the hot new exotic pet. People bought them as tiny $10 snakes, thinking they were cool. But those cool snakes do not stay small. They grow, and they grow fast. A snake that fits in your hand becomes a 10-foot 50 lb monster in just a few years. Overwhelmed pet owners did the only thing they could think of. They drove to the edge of the Everglades and released them. They thought they were setting them free. Instead, they were lighting a fuse on an ecological time bomb. For years, nobody paid much attention, but the pythons were thriving. The Everglades was a perfect storm of opportunity. It was a python paradise, the heat, the humidity, and an endless all-you-can-eat buffet of native animals that had zero natural defenses. The Burmese python is a monster of engineering. They are masters of camouflage. They can hold their breath underwater for over 30 minutes. And the crazy part is they have thermal sensing pits along their jaws. They can literally see the body heat of a warm-blooded mammal in total darkness. A raccoon does not stand a chance. And then there is the breeding. A single female can lay a clutch of up to 100 eggs. With no natural predators, their population went vertical. Today, experts estimate there are anywhere from 100,000 to over 300,000 pythons slithering through South Florida. And the paradise that was once bursting with life is now falling silent. The numbers are so bad they sound fake. A landmark study revealed the horrifying truth. In the hardest hit areas, raccoon populations have dropped by 99.3%. Opossums are down 98.9%. Bobcat numbers have fallen by 87%. Think about that. Not 10%. 99% gone. Erased. What most people do not realize is what this feels like. Biologists who have worked in the Everglades for decades talk about the silence. They used to stop their cars for turtles and rabbits. Now they see nothing for miles. The small mammals that formed the foundation of the food web have been vacuumed up. The invaders had found heaven, and they were consuming it whole. But just as the state tried to fight back, they realized they were bringing a knife to a gunfight, hunting ghosts in the grass. As the silence in the Everglades became deafening, the state of Florida finally had to act, but their response at first looked like something out of a cheap reality TV show. They launched the Florida Python Challenge. It was part publicity stunt, part desperate lottery ticket. They invited the public, anyone brave enough, to wade into the swamp and hunt the giant invaders. They offered cash prizes. It became an annual spectacle. By 2024, hundreds of people showed up armed with traps and snake hooks. That year, they captured 195 Burmese pythons. The headlines were great. The photos were dramatic. It felt like a victory. But yeah, about that, let's do the math. They removed 195 snakes. Even if they hit 300 the next year, it is statistically zero. If the real number is 300,000 snakes, removing a few hundred is like trying to empty the ocean with a teaspoon. The pythons were outreading the bullets, so the state got more serious. They hired elite paid hunters. These were professionals paid an hourly wage to stalk the levees day and night. Since 2017, these contractors have removed thousands of pythons. Over 23,000 snakes have been eliminated in total. It sounds impressive, but even that massive number is likely less than 5% of the total population. For every one snake they find, 20 more hatch hidden in the endless sawgrass. Frustrated, Florida turned to high-tech warfare. They launched drones equipped with high-resolution thermal cameras, thinking they could spot the snake's heat signatures from above. But here is the deal. The Everglades is hot, the ground is hot, the water is hot, and pythons are cold-blooded. To a thermal camera, a python looks just like a warm rock. The drones were a bust. Then they tried robot rabbits. Engineers designed fake rabbits that gave off heat and moved, trying to lure the pythons into an ambush. It failed. Pythons are ambush predators. They wait perfectly still for real prey. They were not interested in noisy, clunky robots. The only thing that worked was the Judith snake program. Researchers would capture a male python, implant a tracker, and release him. He would lead them to the breeding females. It works, but it is incredibly slow and expensive. And here is the wildest theory of all. The hunters say the snakes are getting smarter. They seem to know where the traps are. They avoid the levees where the humans walk. Is it possible that an apex predator is evolving a new kind of intelligence? The tech was failing. The hunters were outmatched. But while humans were losing the war, a microscopic monster was quietly preparing to take over everything. Jumping species barriers. This is where the aftermath takes a dark, unexpected turn. What if Florida's biggest problem wasn't the 20-foot python, but something microscopic? Deep in the Everglades, a silent passenger arrived with the invaders. It is an unseen parasite, and it is rewriting Florida's ecological story in the most gruesome way. Its name is Rheatiella orientalis. It is better known as the snake lungworm. Scientists first stumbled onto this threat during exams of native Florida snakes. They were finding native species, garter snakes, pygmy rattlesnakes that were emaciated. They were weak, struggling to breathe. When they opened them up, they found a horror show. Their lungs were clogged with dozens of tiny writhing worms. This lungworm comes from Asia. The pythons carry it, but it rarely hurts them. They have immunity. But Florida's native snakes have zero defense. It is a brand new alien enemy. And get this, the way it spreads is terrifying. An infected python leaves waste in the swamp. Cockroaches eat the waste, frogs eat the cockroaches. And finally, a native snake eats the frog. The larvae do not stay in the stomach. They tunnel through the stomach wall and go straight to the lungs. There, they feed on blood and tissue. They clog the airways until the snake suffocates. Researchers have found snakes with worms literally crawling out of their mouths as they gasp for their last breath. The real shock came when scientists discovered how far it had spread. It is not just in the Everglades anymore. At least 18 different native snake species are infected. The parasite has moved as far north as Jacksonville. And the scariest part, the lungworm does not need the python anymore. It has jumped ship. It is now spreading from native snake to native snake all on its own. Even if every python vanished tomorrow, the plague would stay. So now we have a double disaster. The pythons eat the mammals and the worms eliminate the native reptiles. The food web is collapsing from both ends. But there is one very strange twist. The Florida cottonmouth, a venomous pit viper, seems resistant. No one knows why. Is their blood the cure? While scientists scrambled for answers, the state announced a plan so crazy that the entire world thought it was a joke: immunity to venom. With the ecosystem on life support, officials announced the plan. They were going to release hundreds of more snakes into the wild. When the news broke, social media exploded. Doesn't Florida have enough snakes? Is this a joke? People compared it to the cane toads in Australia, another human mistake that would ruin everything. The mockery was instant. But here represents the catch. This wasn't just any snake. The snake they were releasing was the eastern indigo snake, and it wasn't an invader. It was the rightful king returning to reclaim its throne. The eastern indigo is known as the emperor of the forest. It is the longest native snake in North America, growing up to 9 feet long. Its scales are a stunning iridescent blue-black that shimmer in the sun. But its beauty isn't the point. Its diet is the eastern indigo eats other snakes, and that is putting it lightly. It is completely immune to the venom of North America's pit vipers. Rattlesnakes, cottonmouths, copperheads, the indigo eats them all. It doesn't constrict them. It just pins them down with powerful jaws and swallows them alive. It is the boss of the forest floor. But its kingdom had crumbled. The indigo relies on the gopher tortoise. It uses tortoise burrows to escape the heat and cold. As development paved over Florida, the tortoises disappeared and the indigos vanished with them. By 1978, they were wiped out from North Florida. So, the crazy plan was actually a brilliant restoration project. For decades, conservation groups had been breeding indigos in captivity. They were rebuilding the longleaf pine forests. They were preparing the ground. And finally, they started releasing them in the Appalachian Bluffs Preserve. Everyone held their breath. Would they survive? Would they eat? Then, in late 2023, trail cameras captured footage that changed everything. It showed 2 tiny indigo hatchlings. These weren't really snakes. These were babies born in the wild. For the first time in 50 years, the emperor was reproducing on its own. The plan was working. But while the king was returning in the north, something even more shocking was happening down south. The native animals were done being victims. The collision course. While the world was busy arguing about the indigo snake release, nature was quietly adapting. Deep in the Big Cypress National Preserve, researchers were tracking that 50 lb python named Loki. When they found his carcass, they were baffled. His head was chewed off. A trail camera nearby revealed the culprit. It was a native bobcat. This bobcat weighed barely 25 pounds. It was half the size of the snake. Yet it had stalked, attacked, and eliminated the python. This was a first. For 2 decades, pythons were the monsters. Now, the home team was scoring points. And it wasn't just one bobcat. Across Florida, reports are coming in. Alligators are ambushing smaller pythons. Even the endangered Florida panther has been seen taking them down. What if the predators are learning? What if they are sharing knowledge? One wildlife biologist called it a score for the home team. It seems the native wildlife is finally figuring out the monster's weak spots, but it is not that simple. A single bobcat cannot undo 20 years of destruction. The pythons are still winning by numbers, but the dynamic has shifted. It is no longer a slaughter, it is a war. And this leads to the final, most exciting possibility. The eastern indigo snakes are spreading south from their release sites. The pythons are spreading north. Eventually, these 2 territories are going to collide. What happens when the emperor meets the invader? Can the indigo snake, immune to rattlesnake venom, take down a Burmese python? Or will the lungworm take them both out? The footage from Florida's swamps has revealed an aftermath nobody expected. It is not just death and silence, it is resilience. The bobcats are fighting. The king has returned. And the swamp is far from dead. We looked for a high-tech solution, but the real hope was there all along. Hidden in the scales of a native snake and the claws of a hungry bobcat, the battle for the Everglades is just entering its most violent chapter. So who do you think wins this ultimate showdown? Will the indigo snake save Florida, or will the parasite wipe everything out before the king even arrives? It is a gamble with the highest stakes imaginable. Let me know your prediction in the comments below. If you want to see more nature mysteries solved, hit that like button and subscribe. the swamp has plenty more secrets to tell.